I think one apprehension that every student who's starting school again has, whether you're just graduating from college or you've had to wear a suit to work everyday jobs, is, am I a STEM student? Can I do this?
I have several goals for students in my class over the course of the year. Of course, my kind of number one goal is for them to learn a lot of biology, all the fundamental things they need to be successful in medical school. But in addition, I really want students to learn how they best learn. A lot of times people have to change their learning strategies from what they did in college, and I really enjoy working with students to kind of figure out what works best for them and how they can learn efficiently.
I had two roommates when I was a postbac student, both of whom were also in the program, and neither of whom had any background in science. One was an English major and the other was a linguist who studied French. I was really relieved to live with two people who had a really fresh perspective about how to learn science, and they both brought a lot of skills to studying that were not science specific, but were very science applicable. So for example, my roommate Perry did a lot of essay reading as an English major, and the way that he read textbooks was not unlike the way he read essays. And by that I mean he did a very thorough, close reading. And I got a lot out of seeing how a person really could learn from a textbook in a way that I had never seen before. To the contrary, my roommate Will was a very fast learner and preferred to only take notes and listen to lectures. And so the three of us together could sit down at the end of the week to go over a problem set, and all three of us would have taken very different approach and could, without exception pretty much, get to an answer that was acceptable. One of the really wonderful things about taking three science courses at the same time is the way that they converge, particularly in the second half of the year. After you sort of have a foundation of general chemistry, biology really quickly goes from looking at cells under a microscope to talking about organ systems. Right as the year comes to a close, there's this really lovely convergence between chemistry and bio. We're sort of talking about metabolism and function and energy and all these really interrelated organ systems. And then out of nowhere, organic comes in and we start talking about sugars and proteins. And suddenly it feels like you have a really clear scientific picture that sort of builds out to the whole human body. And it feeds really well into the first year of medical school for that.
Since I only teach postbacs, I've been able to design a biology curriculum that is specific for their goal of going to medical school. So each thing as I present, even though it has many aspects of a traditional intro bio class, there are a lot of examples I use that are medically related, and I'm always thinking about how the students are going to use this information as they go to medical school. A few years ago, I even had the opportunity to attend some medical school classes and see what students were learning in medical school in their first year. And that really helped inform my thinking about what kind of background they needed to be successful in that environment. In a class of 70 people, I really find that I'm able to get to know people over the course of the year. Between lecture and the ability of people to ask questions there and being in the lab together in smaller groups, plus office hours, there are a lot of opportunities where I get to know students, find out about the things that they're interested in and their motivations for pursuing medicine.
Contrary to what you may have been led to believe by your experience as an undergraduate or with any group of 70 high-achieving, highly motivated people, there was a real absence of competition among the students at Bryn Mawr. I would say that I never felt my success needed to come at the expense of anybody else's. And beyond that, I think people were really actively engaged in helping each other achieve. Many of the students in the class tutor other students concurrently with the classes that they're taking. So if you find you want extra support, you can be tutored by someone else who's also taking the same course. That is both immediately helpful in the support it provides, but also more generally creates a culture where people feel like they can work together and achieve at the same time.
None of the classes at Bryn Mawr are graded on a curve. And there are a lot of different types of assignments in most classes to allow students to show their abilities in different areas. So in my class, while I give exams and quizzes, I also have students write short papers because so many of them come from a humanities background where they really enjoy that sort of work. I also have them give oral presentations during the class so that they can practice using scientific terminology in a way that'll be applicable to their work as future physicians. I also like students to work together on projects and assignments. So on problem sets, they're always allowed to collaborate, and many of the other projects in class are collaborative as well.
One of the ways in which students are supported academically is with peer-led instructors, or PLIs, both throughout the summer and the school year. There will be one or two former postbacs who help out with problem sets, going through extra practice, and generally tutoring students in a group setting. These students are a great resource in part because they've taken the exact class that current students are taking and really excelled in it. They are in a similar point in their lives that you will be, so they can offer a lot of advice and perspective and wisdom that you otherwise might not have access to.
One of the things I really enjoy with working with students in the Bryn Mawr Postbac program is getting to know them on a more casual basis during office hours. I'm always surprised at how many students who come to my office hours frequently over the course of the year tell me that in their 4 years in college that they had never gone to office hours. They would have never thought that they could have an interesting conversation with their professor, or that any question they had would be worthy of going and bothering their professor. But these are really the moments. It's great to have a group of students in my office talking, chatting about the news, about the material, about a lot of things. And I think it really means that I get to know students in a deeper way over the course of the year.
The Bryn Mawr campus is in general very beautiful and I think conducive to studying intensely for a year. One of the major attractions for me is that all of the science courses are housed in the same building, which happens to have been recently renovated. This was both very convenient and also made for a really nice home for all of the postbac students to have on campus. In the center of the building, there is a large, well-lit atrium, and in between classes, I could always find people studying, or if I needed a question answered or I wanted to consult somebody, I, without fail, could walk up to the atrium and find that there'd be a conference room filled with postbacs working on a whiteboard or trying to figure out a tough problem set. So we're in month 9 of COVID US. Shelter in place started in Pennsylvania over spring break of my postbac year. This was obviously sort of horrifying at the time, in part because we were all preparing for the MCAT and in part because a lot of people's lives felt like they were at risk. I think the thing I found most comforting about being a student at this time was the degree to which Dr. Wien brought COVID into our classroom, not literally, but as something to be studied. It was empowering to know that we had studied pretty much every single element all the way up to the ACE2 receptor in the lungs that was related to COVID. And as data was coming, particularly at that time, from China and sort of the early parts of infections in the US, we were talking about it in real time as part of our curriculum. And the semester concluded with us taking a final exam and then writing a paper about a COVID topic with our lab mates. And so although it was a little disruptive to our in-person learning, the professors here, and particularly Dr. Wien, were very adaptable and responsive to the moment.
When we pivoted last semester due to the pandemic, I decided to change some of the assignments that we had at the end of the year, and I gave the students the option of either writing a paper as part of a group or some other sort of assignment. So I had students writing about what was known about convalescent plasma in terms of treating viral disease. I had other students who created a podcast about the nervous system. I had students who made pamphlets about traumatic brain injuries. It was really gratifying to see how everyone in the class was able to go to the scientific literature, study a new topic that really built on what we had done in class, and was able to create a really top-notch piece of work, even under the conditions of quarantine.
My favorite unit of study as a postbac student was in the second semester biology, when we started to talk about connective tissue. For those of you who are watching at home, you might think, oh, that's a little bit of a snoozer. But as it turns out, blood is a connective tissue, and blood has a lot of really interesting features. It's birthed in your bone marrow. It's what keeps you alive and connects you to the outdoors and helps you breathe. And I think for me, that felt like a really beautiful moment of clarity and understanding of myself and sort of everyone. I became very intrigued about blood and all of its facets. I was sort of surprised by this, and I think it was just another way in which the year ended up being sort of really fundamental to understanding everybody's life. One thing I learned this year was how to be a really great test taker. I think that the Bryn Mawr program gently but firmly will help you develop into a person who can master material and then demonstrate mastery of it in a way that medical schools want. The reality is that this is a career path where there's a lot of testing, and I think Bryn Mawr does a very fair and appropriate way of preparing you for that reality. There are a lot of really talented women at Bryn Mawr who get here and are 18, and they might be 10 years younger than you, but there's a lot to learn from them, particularly the way that they perform and behave in science classroom was both very inspiring and very fun. I feel like I got a lot out of seeing that. And even though I'm a college graduate, to see how a new college student is becoming a scientist was really cool. And then the other thing I would say is you can sort of go to the Bryn Mawr website and look at the track record. And the fact is, like, you're going to be at Bryn Mawr for a reason, and you're going to be able to do the work. And I think that you'll find by the end of the year, whether you intended to or thought you had changed, you will have changed a lot as a learner. And that's a great feeling.